Okay, so learning objective number 3, understand the benefit and limitations of ABC and ABM. Activity-based management, ABM, is using activity-based cost information to make decisions that increase profits while satisfying customer needs. I'm going to come back to this. It's useful for pricing and product mix decisions. It's also useful for cutting costs, and it's also useful for routine planning and control decisions. So let's look at this more specifically. Pricing and product mix decisions. We might change prices after identifying under or over costed products. You know, it may be that we were wondering why our competitors are selling certain items for a lot less than we are. And we were thinking, well, they must be losing money off of this because there's no way that our costing system tells us that a particular product costs X amount of dollars. And how can you price it at that amount when you're going to be losing money? But if we get more sophisticated at our costing systems, it may turn out that we figure out, oh, okay, well, they've had it all figured out. They knew that their actual costs, or what they were allocating for MOH to their products, was much lower than what we had. And so for that reason, we were pricing our products much higher than they. That put us out of the market. We weren't being as competitive as we needed to be. People were moving to their products because they were cheaper. And there was no significant difference between our products and their products. So that's an example of how we may change our price based upon this information. We'll capitalize on extra profitability by increasing advertising. So now that we know that we could make a few more dollars, we can then use that money to maybe advertise a bit more. Often overcosting high volume products and undercosting low volume products. What we often find is that before we use ABC, we may end up in this kind of a situation where we're costing our high volume products too high. And then we may decide as well, this is one thing that certainly that a sales and marketing group wants to be aware of, particularly if it impacts the bottom line, is which products are actually making us more money. And with that, that's going to impact what we're going to be advertising or what we're going to spend more time selling. Because we don't want to emphasize something that we're not really making that much money off of. We want to be able to focus on those products that are actually generating a pretty high gross profit. In terms of cutting costs, it'll help us pinpoint opportunities to cut costs. We'll look at value-added activities. Those are activities which the customer is willing to pay adds value to the final product, something that the customer is really perceiving as value, something that's important to them. Certainly the price will be, but certainly the quality of the product, maybe the packaging, the delivery, on-time deliveries may be important to the customer as well. Non-value added activities are those that really don't, the customer doesn't really care. It may be that the customer doesn't care if it's blue or black. That may not be that big of a deal. It just, there's no value to it. I'm gonna take an example. Let's say if you're running agriculture tubing, irrigation tubing. Let's say you're running irrigation tubing. I doubt customers are really concerned about whether the tube is blue or black. If it's going to cost you extra money to paint it blue or to come up with a plastic resin that's going to be blue, yet the customer doesn't really care, why would you do that? So that's a non-value added activity, right? Now, whenever you have non-value added non-added value activities, you're going to look to reduce or remove those. Let me give you another example. Let's say setups. Every time you set up a new system, you've got to spend some time to turn the machines off, maybe remove molds, maybe even clean some things out. And this could take a lot of time and effort to switch out depending on the situation or circumstance. And that time and effort and money is, the customer doesn't care how much it takes for you to switch out. They're not gaining anything one way or the other. So that's a non-value added activity. The question is what can we do from a manufacturing perspective to lower those costs, to find a way to make that as smooth as possible, as quickly as possible. If we can find a way to lower that cost, the customers are going to really care, about that changeover. They just are going to know that, we might be able to lower the price because we're finding a better way of holding our costs down. So any way you cut it, we're going to look at ways of reducing or removing non-value added activities. ABC can also help us with routine planning and control decisions. So it helps us to be a little bit more sophisticated with our budgets. And then that also then will help us compare with the actual cost to determine if goals are being met. So planning and control are a big value when it relates to ABC. ABC across the value chain and service and merchandising. So far we've focused so much on manufacturing, but there are some value items here that will carry over to service and merchandising. What are they? Well, let's look at this. Better determine costs of designing or marketing products or services. Anytime you come up with better costing systems, there's some value there. Calculate cost of customer service to different clients. It may mean that you find out that you're spending a lot more time servicing specific clients, yet you are charging them the same. So maybe we can look at that a little bit more carefully to figure out where we're doing, to figure out if some adjustments need to be done. Focus on profitable products, services, and customers. This is what I mentioned to you earlier about product mix. And then cost of operating activities, ordering, stocking, etc. If we're tracking this and we're keeping track of these costs broken down by these pools, we're able to manage it better. So the cost benefit test, I will tell you that ABC, activity-based costing, is going to be expensive to implement because you're talking about hiring more cost accountants, having production people spend more time looking at activities and costs and writing things down and keeping track of everything. It is more time and effort. But what we have to remember, as always, the benefit of ABC must outweigh the cost in order to implement it. So this is not an automatic. ABC doesn't always work. It really kind of depends on the circumstances. Benefits are higher in competitive markets because accurate product cost information is essential for pricing, and we need to pinpoint cost savings that can be passed on to the customers. So in a very competitive market, then you don't have that much flexibility with pricing. So you're going to try to find ways to make sure that you've got the right cost so you can price it more precisely, but also being more specific or more detailed in your costing system will allow you to figure out where you might be able to save some costs. Going on for cost benefit tests, benefits are higher when the risk of cost distortion is high. For example, when the company produces many different products that use different types and amounts of resources. And here's a big kicker here. In fact, I'm going to tell you this is probably the most important element. A company that has high indirect costs, well, remember, indirect costs are the manufacturing overhead costs. So a company that has high indirect costs are obviously going to benefit from this because indirect costs are a big part of the overall cost of your product. I mean, you have direct labor, direct materials, and then you have MOH. And if MOH is a big portion of your cost, then you're definitely going to benefit more from ABC. And then continuing on with benefits, produces high volumes of some products and low volumes of other products. So if you have that kind of a situation, you'll also notice that ABC will be more beneficial. In terms of costs are generally lower when the company has accounting and information system enterprise to develop the system, and IT such as barcoding and optical scanning, web-based data and collections. So, you're going to be using technology to drive these costs down, and that's when we know that they'll be lowered. Here are some signs that you may want to notice, particularly if the old system may be distorting costs. So what you want to be looking at is managers don't understand costs and profits. If they don't understand it, that means that it just doesn't make sense to them. The numbers just don't look right to them. When you start to feel that as an accountant, you're gonna think, well, maybe we need to be more sophisticated in our cost system. When you go out and try to bid for jobs, if you're significantly different from others, then that may be a clue. Competitors with similar products price their products lower but still earn profits. And employees do not believe the cost numbers. If you have that kind of a situation, you have to take a look to see if maybe you're distorting costs. And then the cost system is outdated, or could be, if the company has diversified it. If the company has diversified its products, if you started off with just one, but now you have 25, well, maybe you need to be a little bit more sophisticated. And the company has re-engineered its production process. So those are two situations where things change, and you may decide, you know what, I need to make a change and be more sophisticated in my costing.